Welcome to the Neuromasters Podcast, the place to reinvent yourself, master your mind, and change your life. Internationally recognized speaker, coach, and trainer Reg Malhotra will teach you tools to improve your mindset, change your behaviors, and let your relationships thrive. Are you ready to unlock the power of your mind? Here's your host, Reg.
Welcome back, everybody. Today I want to talk about one of the most exquisite parts of the human phenomena, and that is the subconscious mind. And we also call it the unconscious mind. And this is something that everyone should look into, study, think about, and eventually learn to get the best out of it. You see, many people have heard about the subconscious mind. We've heard of terms like subconsciously or unconsciously. So there seems to be a broader understanding that there are things we do or things that happen that are outside of our conscious awareness. So what is this subconscious mind? What is this? Is it like a separate brain? Or is it a special kind of a mind that we're not meant to know anything about and it just does things on its own? Is it an intelligence that we have access to? Is it something that we can truly learn about and tap into and utilize? So we're going to explore a lot of these ideas today, this episode. And I think if you're someone who's been looking to make changes in your life, if you're someone who is interested in growing your personal performance, if you're someone who is wanting to know about habits, why certain activities become habits and why certain habits are easy to get rid of, certain habits stick around for a lot longer, all of those things, then this is going to be an interesting episode for you. So let's get right into it. And one of the simplest way of putting what a subconscious mind is, it's everything that is outside of your conscious awareness. Every activity that is happening inside you, and also in many cases that you do externally that you're not consciously thinking about. Like you not saying, I am going to do this. For example, breathing. You're not always consciously breathing, but you are breathing. So let's think of it this way, that there is an intelligence, and we can also call it a mind, that there is a mind that is ensuring that certain activities continue to take place, whether we do them consciously, means thinking about them and then doing them or not. So it's happening unconsciously. Breathing is one, blinking is another. So we'll start with the body. In fact, most involuntary movements are unconscious. That is to say that there is an intelligence that is making sure that these activities are taking place. There's a lot of things that are happening inside of a body, whether it's digestion, whether it's blood flow. There is so much happening that is not conscious. We are not consciously deciding that, okay, I'm going to do this. Now, let's talk about behaviors then. There are things we do. There are actions we take. And as you listen to this, you might be wondering now, what are some of the things that you are doing, some of those behaviors that you're actualizing that you don't even think about? And I can assure you there'll be a lot of them. Some good, some not so good. So then it lends itself to the idea that the subconscious mind is that part of us or the intelligence that is looking to do things for us, looking to serve us, looking to automate. So there are things that we will do if we do them a number of times, if we do them on repeat, then this mind will look to make it programmed, will look to make it automated. This really is not rocket science, and it's really, from my experience, people treat it like a very, very complex phenomena when it can be really broken down as simply as I've just put it, that there are things that we cannot or we don't want to, or we even should not think about consciously. Think about the first time you learn how to drive. Now, when you first got in the car, obviously there was instructions and there was learnings you did. But then when you got in the car, you started to consciously think about what you need to do, whether it's pressing the brake, whether it's the steering. And that phase can be quite fumbly because we're having to use our conscious mind. Now, if you do that enough, then the actions related to driving in many cases become automated. Think about how many times you have driven from point A to point B and haven't even realized how you got there. You haven't thought about the roads, the directions. You haven't thought about the brake, the indicators, the gears. You just have done them as though magically. Now, that is your unconscious part of you, the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind that is taking over an activity so you don't need to think about it consciously. So think about in a day from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, how many things you are doing consciously that is thinking about them, and you'll find that there is more that you're doing that is unconscious, that is automated. Now let's take this internally for a moment. What else are we doing internally within our nervous system, for example, that is unconscious? Is there a particular thought pattern? Is there a particular behavior? Is there an emotion as well? What is our most familiar emotion? Could it be that it's become an unconscious pattern to go back there? Even something like complaining. Are we always unconsciously perhaps, looking for things that are wrong? Are we unconscious looking for everything that is right? Now, this is very, very important because most of your results, I would argue, are due to patterns and processes that are developed at the unconscious level. You can imagine the implications of this. Because if most of our results are a result of our unconscious patterns, then we would really want to know how to interfere with, change, even delete patterns that are not serving us for our highest good. And that means that studying about the unconscious mind, learning about the unconscious mind, working with the unconscious mind becomes one of the most powerful things that you could ever do for yourself. So when it comes to changing patterns, now we could go on for hours and hours and hours and perhaps even days to talk about that. But in this episode, I'm going to talk about some basic things to consider. So the first part is bringing things to the conscious, means becoming conscious. If there is a behavior that you find yourself doing all of the time that you would rather not do, then it requires observation and acceptance that could this be unconscious? Could this have been done enough times that now it's become automated? And it's happening even when you haven't decided for it to happen, or even when you're wanting it to happen, or even when you're thinking about it. It is just sometimes just happens. And by the way, it is very important that we have most things happening unconsciously because our conscious mind is not capable of thinking to that extent all of the day. A conscious mind cannot accept and process the amount of information that is coming to us every second through 6 means: visually, what we see; auditorily, hearing; kinesthetically, feeling; smell and taste; and also self-talk, which, by the way, self-talk in itself can be automated, can become very, very unconscious. Now, the good news story here for those of you listening is the fact that a pattern, a behavior, a thought process, the fact that it can be unconscious also means that we can have the power to alter it. That's the very exciting part. Like I said, the first step is becoming conscious. The second step is deciding or evaluating, if this is doing more good for us or is leading down the wrong path. And then there's a number of techniques that can be deployed to change the behavior. Now, some of them could simply be done at the conscious level, means using willpower. You can make a decision. You can ask people around you to remind you every time you do a certain behavior. You can have reminders. You can have a conscious process of becoming aware every time you do the pattern and start interrupting it. Now, this process can take long, or it may not always work, because willpower, it has somewhat of an expiry on a day-to-day basis because it requires energy. And there's all these other hidden forces that are working against us. And then there are things we can do inside of our brain, inside of our mind, inside of our thinking, and particularly using certain types of visualizing techniques in order to interrupt or change or interfere with existing patterns. Now, a small way of thinking about it is, if there is a new pattern that you would rather have, then you would run pictures in your mind consciously first, and then you would do them with a lot of specificity. If you wanted to add a new behavior of, say, getting up at a certain time, you would create a picture of what that looks like. You would step into your body, see what you would see, hear what you would hear, feel what you would feel, and really make it real enough that your brain thinks that it's already done. You see, the brain does not know the difference between real and imagine. So the more we can create images, movies, even sounds and feelings of what it is we want, what is the behavior or the action we'd rather do, the more real it becomes, and the more we find ourselves unconsciously pulled towards doing it. Now, that's a very simple way that will require a bit of practice, and that will require us to do that over and over again until it becomes unconscious. There's a lot we can do over and over again that can become unconscious. Think about all the things that you know today that you're competent in. You may have started by becoming consciously competent at it, but at some point, if you did it enough, you become unconsciously competent, as though you just know what to do without even thinking about it. That's the huge opportunity here. And I think the more you think about it, the more you understand is the more you take your power away, the more you bring your power back, because you see a lot of people give away their ability without realizing this stuff. They think things are just happening to them without realizing that we do have the power to make changes to these patterns, make changes to these behaviors, make changes to these thought structures. See, for a lot of people, they even get stuck in similar thought patterns. You see, 95% of our thoughts are the same as the day before. And this is happening unconsciously. We're thinking about the same things that we were the day. If you're always worrying, then you're continuing to worry the day after and the day after that. And this is all at one point unconscious. Even feeling sad can become an unconscious activity if we do it enough. You see, the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind's job is to make things easy for us, to make things automated for us, so we don't have to think about everything. Because if we have to think about everything, it was just about drive us crazy. So what I'd like you to do is, as you think about these concepts in this episode, is to really work towards bringing more of your behaviors, more of your activities, more of your thought patterns to your consciousness. One simple way of doing that is writing these things down. What do you do from morning till night? What are the behaviors that you're producing on a regular basis? Identify them. Become conscious of it. You see, the act of becoming conscious alone can start to make changes. Now, there are other tools like hypnosis. You see, think about hypnosis. There are so many misconceptions, but in reality, it is a tool to rewire our unconscious patterns. How can you explain a smoker who's been smoking for sometimes 20 years, giving up that habit in a matter of 2 hours? Because the communication with a tool like hypnosis is made at the unconscious level, at the subconscious level, where changes are in fact made. All learning, behavior, and change is eventually unconscious. It may start at the conscious level, but eventually it gets relegated to the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind, so that it is available to us when we need it. So becoming conscious, becoming aware, if and only if there are things that you want to change, the new things you want to introduce. The biggest message I have in this episode is becoming conscious of what you're currently doing, identifying it, and then starting to make decisions to want to change them. Because if you don't become conscious, we remain unconscious. Now that could be unconscious of the good things that are happening, but it's also unconscious of the bad things or the things that we don't want continuing. So that's my message for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I highly encourage you to think about this idea of the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind. Have an acceptance that there are things that are happening at the unconscious level, that you have this exquisite intelligence in you that is there to serve you, that is there to help you reach your goals, that is there to bring the things to you that you want to bring. You see, the conscious mind is the goal setter, but the unconscious mind is the goal getter. It's that part of you that creates the energy, the motivation to take you towards your goals. Because if you have to continually think about it, it's not always as effective. But if something that has been set at the unconscious level is there to take you there, energize you, then you're way more likely to reach your desired outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in today. Are you ready to take the next step and find out what's keeping you from reaching your goals and creating the life you want? Go to go.neuromastersacademy.com/GS-LP for a free transformational mini workshop with Reg. See you next week.